Skye cradled her 7-month baby bump like it was her golden ticket to a life of endless riches. She'd managed to pry the millionaire away from his wife, obliterated a decade-long marriage, and guaranteed her own glittering future. But when Sheila strolled into that same party, radiant on the arm of another bloke, Skye was about to discover that some victories can be the greatest public humiliation of your life, and that not all secrets stay buried forever. Sheila was folding laundry in the bedroom when Darren's phone buzzed on the bed. At first, she didn't even glance at it. She was focused on the pile of shirts that needed ironing, but the thing just wouldn't shut up. Message after urgent message, like it was a 5-alarm fire. Curious, she moved closer and saw a name flash on the screen. Skye. Who the bloody hell was Skye? Darren had never once mentioned a Skye from the office. A cold knot twisted in Sheila's stomach. That awful sinking feeling you get when you just know something is completely wrong. The screen lit up again. Another text from this Skye, and another. Sheila glanced at the bathroom door. She could hear the shower running. Her hands trembled as she picked up the phone. She knew she shouldn't look, but something inside her screamed that she had to know. The first message she read made her whole world crumble. Darling, I can't hide it any longer. Our baby is getting too big to hide. Sheila read it again, thinking she'd misunderstood. Darren was going to be a father. But how? They'd been trying to have a baby for years. Her hands shook so much she nearly dropped the phone. She scrolled up, reading message after message. I love you, my borrowed husband. Can't wait for you to be free of her. Our baby will be born in the mansion she thinks is hers. Every single word was a stab to the chest. Darren had a mistress, and that mistress was having his baby. The baby Sheila had dreamed of giving him for so long. The baby the doctors said she couldn't have. Sheila sank onto the bed, her legs gone to jelly. How many times had she blamed herself for not getting pregnant? How many nights had she cried herself to sleep, hidden in the bathroom, thinking she was a broken wife? And now she discovered Darren had found a baby with the first woman who came along. The shower stopped. Darren would be out any minute. Sheila placed the phone back exactly where she'd found it. She tried to act like she was still folding laundry, but the tears wouldn't stop. How was she going to pretend she knew nothing? Darren came out of the bathroom with a towel around his waist, humming to himself. He seemed happy. Happier than he'd been in a long time. Now she understood why. He had a pregnant girlfriend waiting for him somewhere. "What's with the long face, love?" Darren asked, seeing her tear-streaked face. "What are you crying for?" Sheila stared at him. 12 years of marriage, 12 years of building a life together, and he was asking her with that innocent look, as if he hadn't just destroyed everything behind her back. "Who is Skye?" The question came out in a whisper, but it sliced through the silence of the room like a razor. Darren stopped drying himself. His expression changed in an instant. The smile vanished. His shoulders tensed. He knew he'd been caught out. "How did you find out about her?" Darren didn't deny it. He didn't pretend he didn't know anyone named Skye. He only wanted to know how Sheila had discovered the truth. "Your phone wouldn't stop buzzing. She was sending messages saying you're going to be a father." Sheila tried to keep her voice steady, but she was breaking apart inside. Darren sighed heavily and sat on the bed, on the other side. "Sheila, I can explain." "Explain what?" she snapped. "That you have a mistress? That she's pregnant? That you've been making plans behind my back?" Her voice was rising, all the pain pouring out at once. "It wasn't planned. It just happened?" Sheila stood up, outraged. "Did you trip and fall on top of her? Did she get pregnant by a gust of wind?" Darren dropped his head. "It started a few months ago. She works in the building next to the office. We'd just meet for lunch sometimes." "A few months?" Sheila felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. "How many months, Darren?" 8. 8 months. He'd been cheating for 8 months. And she hadn't noticed a thing. How could a wife not notice her husband had another woman for so long? All those late-night meetings, the weekends working, the calls he took in the garden. And the baby? Yeah, she's pregnant. Darren said it as if he were commenting on the weather. No emotion, no remorse. Sheila collapsed to the floor. Literally. Her legs couldn't hold her up anymore. She just sat there on the rug, sobbing like a little kid. All that suffering because she couldn't give Darren a child. All those doctor's appointments, all those painful treatments. And he'd gotten a baby with the first woman who turned up. Sheila, get up off the floor. Darren tried to help her, but she pulled away. Don't touch me. Don't you ever touch me again. She got up by herself, wiping the tears from her face with the back of her hand. I'm going to own up to the baby, Darren said, as if he were doing her a favor. Sky deserves it. And what about me? Don't I deserve anything? You're a wonderful woman, Sheila, but you can't give me kids. Sky can. The cruelty of those words echoed in the room. Sheila looked at the man she'd married, the man she'd dreamed of building a family with, and saw a stranger. A cold man, capable of throwing her deepest hurt right back in her face. So that's it? You're leaving me for a baby bump? It's not just the baby bump, it's that with Sky I feel young again. She's different, She's what? Sheila cut him off. Prettier? Younger? Tell me. Darren hesitated, but the truth came out. She's everything I always wanted in a woman. Those words were the final bullet. Sheila realized she had not only lost her husband, but also the illusion that she had ever truly been loved by him. If Sky was everything he'd always wanted, then Sheila had been nothing at all. I'm going to pack a bag. Darren stood up and started grabbing clothes from the wardrobe. You're leaving tonight? Sky's waiting. I've already rented an apartment for us. Sheila couldn't believe it. He already had a place with his mistress. He already had a new life built, all while playing house with her. How many nights had she cooked him a nice dinner, waiting for him to get home, not knowing he was building a new family with another woman? Darren filled 2 bags with his most important things. Sheila just stood in the corner of the room, watching her entire life unravel in a matter of minutes. 12 years boiled down to 2 bags. When he finished, he walked over to her. Sheila, I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve to find out this way. And how did I deserve to find out, Darren, when Sky was in the maternity ward giving birth to your child? Darren didn't answer. He picked up the bags and headed for the door. As he was leaving, his phone rang. He answered it right in front of Sheila, without a single bit of shame. Good day, my love. Yeah, I'm on my way. Yeah, she knows everything now. No, it wasn't hard. She understood the situation. Darren looked at Sheila as he spoke. Sheila felt a rage rise in her chest that she'd never felt before. How dare he say she understood the situation? How dare he talk to his mistress right in front of her, as if she were just a piece of furniture in the house? Tell her I didn't understand a damn thing, Sheila said loudly enough for Sky to hear on the other end of the line. Tell her that after 12 years of marriage, I didn't understand how you became a bloke with no character. Darren hung up the phone quickly. You don't have to be rude. Rude? Sheila laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. I'm not the one who's rude here, mate. He walked out without looking back. Sheila heard the car start in the garage, the gate open, the sound of the engine fading into the distance. And then, finally, silence. A silence that hurt more than any scream. She looked at herself in the bedroom mirror. Dishevelled hair, face puffy from crying, crumpled pajamas. This was how years of marriage ended. With her shattered in an empty room, while Darren raced to the arms of a pregnant woman with his baby. The one that should have been hers. That night, Sheila slept alone in a bed that had always been hers. But for the first time, it felt vast and frozen. And she had no idea that this was just the beginning. The worst was still to come. Months passed, and Sheila discovered that the pain of betrayal was like a wound that wouldn't heal. Every morning she woke up, hoping it had all been a terrible nightmare, but the empty side of the bed confirmed that everything was all too real. It was when her so-called mates started sending photos on WhatsApp that Sheila truly understood the scale of the public humiliation she was facing. The first photo showed Darren and Skye walking into a baby store at the poshest shopping centre in the city. Skye was glowing, with her bump front and centre, picking out a cot that cost more than most people's yearly salary. The second photo hurt even more. Skye had posted on social media, with her bump on full display, writing, "When God closes a door, he opens a brand new gateway. My prince has finally broken free of his past, and now it's just the three of us, me, him, and our baby." Sheila read that post dozens of times. Broken free of his past. That's how Skye referred to her. As if 12 years of marriage were just an obstacle Darren had to overcome. As if she were old furniture that had finally been tossed out. But it was the third photo that made Sheila realize Darren hadn't just abandoned her. He'd planned to erase every single trace of her from his life. The picture showed Skye inside the house where Sheila had lived for so many years. The furniture was being replaced. The garden she'd carefully tended to every weekend was being ripped up. Skye wasn't just taking Sheila's husband, she was taking her entire life. That same day, Sheila received a visit from a lawyer. A slick man with a fancy leather briefcase and a professional grin. He handed her a stack of papers that would make anyone crumble. "Ma'am, your husband is asking for a divorce, and here are the terms he's offering." Sheila read every line of those documents, her heart shattering into a million pieces. Darren wanted to keep the house, the business they'd built together, the savings, everything. For her, he was offering a settlement that wouldn't even cover the rent on a decent apartment for a few years. "And what if I don't accept?" The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "Ma'am, your husband has the resources to drag this out for years, and during that time, you won't have access to anything. Not the house, not the money." He suggested she accept the offer to avoid any further embarrassment. Further embarrassment. As if it wasn't humiliating enough to discover your husband had a pregnant mistress and now wanted to leave his wife destitute. "What's the rush?" Sheila asked, even though she already knew the answer. "The baby is due in a few months. Your husband wants to regularize the situation before that." Regularize the situation? What an elegant way to say Darren wanted to get rid of his legal wife before making the new family official. Sheila signed the papers that same day. Not because she agreed with them, but because she didn't have the strength to fight. With each passing day, she felt more alone, more tired, more invisible. It was as if Skye had stolen not just her husband, but her will to fight. Days later, the worst news arrived. An old acquaintance called to say she'd seen Darren at the lawyer's office changing his will. Everything he now had would be left to Skye and the baby. If anything happened to him, Sheila wouldn't inherit even the watch she'd given him as a wedding gift. But the final humiliation came when Sheila was forced to move out of the house. Skye wanted to move in before the baby arrived, and Darren had given Sheila a week's notice to collect her things. Sheila spent that week packing 12 years of her life into cardboard boxes. Every single object she packed told a story. The blender they got for their wedding, photos from the trips they took together, the books they read before bed, everything going into boxes as if they were just worthless junk. On the last day, as she was loading the final items, Skye arrived with Darren to supervise the move. Sheila saw her in person for the first time and had to admit she understood Darren's fascination. Skye was genuinely beautiful. Young, blonde, with that special glow that pregnant women have. "Wow, you really kept a lot of useless stuff, hey?" Sky commented, looking at Sheila's boxes. "At least I'll get to redecorate from scratch." Darren didn't say a word. He just stood there, watching Sheila load the heaviest boxes on her own as if she were just a hired mover. "Darren, can you help me with this box?" Sheila asked, pointing to a box full of books. "Sky's pregnant. I can't be lifting heavy things and stressing her out," he replied, without even looking at Sheila. Sky smiled, victorious. "That's right. The doctor said I have to avoid any kind of stress, and seeing your ex-wife is a little stressful, isn't it?" Sheila lifted the box alone, and all the others too. Darren stood next to Sky, his hand on her baby bump, as if protecting a precious treasure. When Sheila put the last box on the removal truck, Sky delivered one final blow. "Sheila, I don't mean to be a cow, but you should probably use this move to get a fresh start. Find someone your own age, someone who doesn't want kids. Because let's be fair, hey? You tried with Darren for so many years and never got anywhere. Maybe it's best to accept that it's just not meant to be for you." Every single word from Sky was a punch to the gut. Sheila looked at Darren, hoping he would say something to defend her dignity, even just a little bit. But he remained silent, with his arm wrapped protectively around his girlfriend's belly. "You're right," Sheila said, surprising them both. "I really do need to get a fresh start." Sky smiled, thinking she'd won completely. But something in Sheila's tone made Darren's head snap up. There was a determination there he hadn't expected. Sheila climbed into the removal truck and waved to them. "Take good care of the house. I built it with a lot of love." As the truck drove away, Sheila saw Sky and Darren in the rearview mirror, walking into the house that was once hers. Sky was laughing, pointing at the garden, probably planning all the changes she would make. In that moment, driving toward the tiny apartment she'd been able to rent, Sheila made a decision. She wasn't going to cry forever. She wasn't going to let Sky and Darren think they had completely broken her. They thought they had won. They thought they had gotten everything they wanted without consequence. But life has a curious way of teaching lessons to those who think they can walk all over people without a care in the world. Sheila didn't know how yet, but she was certain that one day the truth would come out. And when it did, Sky would discover that some victories cost a whole lot more than we could ever imagine. The apartment Sheila had managed to rent was in an old building, a world away from everything she knew. 2 tiny bedrooms, a kitchen the size of a cupboard, and a window that looked out onto the neighbour's wall. It was the complete opposite of the spacious house where she'd lived for so many years, but it was all her money allowed for now. In the first week, she still held on to the hope that her friends would show up to visit, to offer support, to show her she wasn't completely alone in the world. But the phone never rang. The WhatsApp messages got fewer and fewer each day, and when they did come, they were always the same. "Heard about the divorce, Sheila? What a tough situation, hey? But life goes on." The first betrayal from her friends came through Kylie, her best mate of 15 years. They had shared secrets, holidays, entire afternoons talking about their husbands, their dreams, their fears. Sheila thought if anyone would stick by her side, it would be Kylie. That's when she saw the photos on Instagram and understood how wrong she had been. Kylie was at Sky's birthday party, smiling, raising a glass, celebrating as if nothing had happened. In the caption she'd written, "Celebrating life and new beginnings with some special people." Sheila stared at that photo dozens of times, trying to understand how a person who called herself her friend could be celebrating with the woman who had destroyed her marriage. But the explanation arrived the next day in a cold message from Kylie. "Sheila, you've got to understand that we can't choose sides. Darren is our friend too, and Sky seems like a really nice person and they're happy. We can't be stuck in the past." Stuck in the past. as if 12 years of marriage were just a phase Sheila needed to get over quickly so as not to inconvenience anyone. The second betrayal was even more brutal. Sheila discovered she'd lost her job at the marketing firm where she'd worked for 8 years. Her boss, a bloke named Richard, called her on a Friday and explained with a fake concerned tone that they had to restructure her department. "It's a business thing, Sheila. You understand, hey?" But Sheila wasn't an idiot. She knew Darren had a lot of influence at that company. He had several contracts with them. He brought in a lot of money. And now that she wasn't his wife anymore, she was a problem. "Richard, does this have anything to do with my divorce?" The man lowered his head, confirming without needing to say a word. "Sheila, you're an excellent professional." But the situation became complicated. Darren suggested it would be better for everyone if you looked for other opportunities. Other opportunities. What an elegant way to say her ex-husband had asked for her to be sacked. Sheila left that office carrying a cardboard box with her personal belongings, feeling like she was losing so much more than a job. She was losing the identity she'd built for years, her professional respect, her financial independence. But the worst betrayal of all came from her own family. Sheila called her older sister Tracy, hoping to find at least a little bit of understanding there. The two had always been close, sharing everything since they were kids. "Tracy, I need to talk to someone. I feel so alone." "Sheila, listen. I get your pain, but you need to have a good hard think about it." "A good hard think about what?" "Didn't you fail as a wife? You didn't give Darren what he wanted. A bloke doesn't stray for no reason." Her sister's words hurt more than anything Darren or Sky had said. It was her own family blaming her for the betrayal she had suffered. "How could you say something like that?" "Sheila, I'm sorry to be so blunt, but you could never give him kids. Any man would end up looking for that elsewhere, and now Sky has given him what you couldn't." Sheila hung up the phone and cried for hours. Even her family was on Darren's side. Even the people who were supposed to love her unconditionally thought she deserved to be abandoned for not being able to get pregnant. The next few days were a blur of unemployment, loneliness, and despair. Sheila started leaving the house only to buy what was necessary, avoiding places where she might run into acquaintances. Every outing was a risk of hearing malicious comments or receiving pitying glances. It was on one of these days at the supermarket that she had the most humiliating encounter of all. Sheila was in the checkout line when she heard a familiar laugh behind her. She turned and saw Sky with 2 of her friends, pushing a trolley full of expensive groceries. Her belly was even bigger now, and she was wearing clothes that cost more than Sheila's monthly rent. "Girls, you'll never guess what happened yesterday," Sky said loudly, as if she wanted the whole world to hear. Darren's ex-wife called him crying, asking to borrow money. Said she's doing it tough. The friends laughed as if it were the funniest thing in the world. "No way!" "And what did he say?" "He told her she needed to learn to stand on her own 2 feet, that it wasn't his problem anymore." Sky laughed even louder. "Imagine, a woman her age with no kids, no husband, no job. She must be desperate." Sheila felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. She had never called Darren asking for money. Sky was making up that story just to humiliate her publicly. And did she take it well? Didn't even call back. She must have got the message. Sky adjusted her belly with pride. Poor thing. She's probably realizing now that she lost the only man who was ever going to want her. Sheila couldn't stay in the line anymore. She abandoned her groceries and ran out of the supermarket, hearing Sky's cackles echoing behind her. She got home shattered, realizing she had nowhere left to run. Her friends had chosen Darren's side. Her family thought she deserved to be abandoned. Her job was made impossible by her ex-husband's influence. And now Sky was spreading lies about her in public. That night, Sheila looked at herself in the mirror of the tiny bathroom and saw a woman she didn't recognize. Uncut hair for weeks, eyes swollen from crying, pale skin from not seeing the sun. It was as if the Sheila who existed before had died along with her marriage. She picked up the phone and for a few moments considered calling Darren. Not to ask for money, as Sky had invented, but to beg him to stop destroying what was left of her life. To ask for a little compassion for what they had lived through together. But as she was about to dial, she remembered the coldness with which he had left the house, the way he had stayed silent while Sky humiliated her, how he'd asked for her to be sacked. Darren wasn't going to have pity on her. He'd just tell Sky that his ex-wife had called him crying, giving her more ammunition for public humiliation. Sheila put the phone down and made the hardest decision of her life. She was going to have to rebuild everything on her own. She was going to have to find a strength she didn't even know she had, because waiting for compassion from the people who had betrayed and abandoned her was just going to prolong the suffering. In that early morning, alone in the silent apartment, Sheila made a silent promise to herself. She wasn't going to give Sky and Darren the pleasure of seeing her destroyed forever. She wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of confirming she was truly a woman who was worth nothing. Because sometimes, when you lose everything and everyone, that's when you discover that the only person you can truly count on is yourself. And that, as scary as it is, can be the beginning of a strength you never knew existed. But Sheila still didn't know that the worst was yet to come, and that the humiliations she'd suffered so far were going to seem small compared to what Sky was planning for her. A little while passed since the humiliating encounter at the supermarket, and Sheila had made a decision that would change everything. She was no longer going to accept being the silent victim everyone walked all over. If Sky and Darren thought they had won completely, they were about to discover that Sheila still had a few tricks up her sleeve. The first thing she did was use a portion of her small amount of money to hire a private investigator. It wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. She needed to find out who Sky really was, because something about that woman just didn't add up. The investigator's name was Mick, a discreet bloke who'd been working on infidelity cases for over 15 years. When Sheila explained the situation, he nodded knowingly. "Ma'am, it's not the first time I've seen this kind of case. Young women who suddenly appear in the lives of rich blokes. There's almost always more to it." "More to it? Like what?" "We'll find out. But give me some time." While she waited for the investigation's results, Sheila decided to do some digging of her own. She started with Sky's social media, studying every photo, every post, every comment. And that's when she noticed the first strange thing. Sky claimed to have a degree in business from a fancy private university in the city, but when Sheila called there, pretending to be a company interested in hiring, she discovered that no one named Sky with that surname had ever graduated from that institution. The second lie appeared when Sheila looked into Sky's professional history. She claimed to work for a digital marketing company. But when Sheila drove past the address Sky had listed on LinkedIn, she found nothing but an abandoned building. "Who is Sky, really?" Sheila whispered to herself, sitting in front of the computer in the middle of the night. The answer came when Mick called with his first discoveries. "Ma'am, sit down, because what I'm about to tell you is going to be a shocker. This Sky's been at it before. 3 times. "What do you mean?" "She's got a pattern. She targets older, married blokes with money, gets close to them, seduces them, gets pregnant, and then takes everything she can. The ex-husbands end up paying child support. She gets the apartment, the car, the jewellery." Sheila's heart pounded. "And the other blokes? What happened to them?" "One of them ended up paying child support for a kid he found out later wasn't his. Another one had a major breakdown and had to be admitted to hospital. The third one managed to prove he was a victim of fraud in court, but by then he'd already lost his house, his business, his family." Sheila felt a mix of horror and relief. Horror at discovering that Sky was even worse than she had imagined. Relief at knowing she wasn't going crazy, that there really was something deeply wrong with that woman. "There's more, ma'am. Sky uses fake names. Her real name is Letitia Santos, and she's got a police record for fraud. A police record? She's been scamming old people pretending to be a nurse, took jewelry and money from several families before she got caught. Sheila hung up the phone, trembling. Darren hadn't just been cheated on, he'd been completely played by a professional criminal, a woman who made destroying families a way of life. But there was one piece of the puzzle that still didn't fit. If Sky was so calculating, why had she gotten pregnant so quickly? That wasn't part of her usual routine with the other men. The answer came when Sheila decided to follow Sky herself. She spent an entire afternoon watching her routine and saw something that changed everything. Sky left the apartment she shared with Darren and went straight to a cafe in the city centre. There, she met a young, dark-haired man who kissed her on the mouth before sitting down. Sheila nearly choked on her own breath. Sky was cheating on Darren. The woman who had destroyed her marriage was doing the exact same thing to Darren. But the big shock came when she overheard their conversation. She moved closer, pretending to read a book at a nearby table, and listened to every word. "Babe, I can't stand pretending this baby is the old man's." Sky spoke softly, but Sheila could hear her perfectly. "Easy, my love. It won't be long now. When the kid's born, we'll take his money and disappear, and live our lives far away from here." "But what if he gets suspicious the baby isn't his?" "He won't. You calculated the dates perfectly. He thinks it happened that night you two made up." Sheila felt the world spin. The baby wasn't Darren's. Sky had planned everything down to the smallest detail, getting pregnant by her real boyfriend but making Darren believe he was the father. "And his ex-wife? Is she going to be a problem?" Sky laughed dismissively. "That poor thing, she's completely broken. No friends, no job. No one believes her anymore. Even if she gets suspicious of something, who's going to listen to her?" "You're a menace," the man said, but there was admiration in his voice. "A menace and effective. In a few months, we'll be rich and free." Sheila left the cafe on shaky legs, but with her heart racing for the first time in months. She had the information she needed. She had proof that Sky wasn't a victim of passion, but a professional criminal. The first thing she did was call Mick. "Mick, I need photos and recordings. Sky is cheating on Darren with another bloke." "Mom, that's not going to be cheap." "The price doesn't matter. I want every bit of evidence you can get." During that period, Sheila transformed into a determined investigator. Along with Mick, she documented every one of Sky's meetings with the baby's real father. Photos, recordings, phone conversations. The most shocking thing was to discover that Sky wasn't just cheating on Darren, she was also stealing from him. She had a secret account where she was stashing money she siphoned from Darren's company using credit cards he didn't even know existed. "Ma'am," Mick said during one of their meetings, "this woman is a public danger. She's not just scamming your ex-husband. She's committing several crimes." But the final discovery was the one that hit Sheila the hardest. Going through the old medical files that Mick had managed to access, she found something that would change everything. During the time they were married, she and Darren had both done fertility tests. At the time, the doctors had told them the problem was with her, that her hormone levels indicated she would have trouble getting pregnant. But when she showed those same tests to a family friend who was a doctor, Dr. Liam, he frowned. Sheila, who interpreted these tests? The doctor we saw back then. Why? Because the interpretation is completely wrong. Your tests are perfectly normal. The problem isn't with you. What do you mean? Dr. Liam took Darren's tests and analyzed them carefully. After a few minutes, he looked up with a grave expression. Sheila, I need to tell you something that will be a shock. According to Darren's tests, he has severe azoospermia. That means he's completely infertile. There's no chance he could have children naturally. Sheila's world was turned upside down all over again. Completely infertile? Completely. If Skye is pregnant, the baby is definitely not his. In that moment, Sheila finally understood the full scale of the deception. Darren had abandoned her, thinking she was infertile, when in reality, the problem had always been his. Skye knew this. That's why she had a parallel affair to get pregnant but made Darren believe he was the father. Doctor. Why did the other doctors say the problem was mine? Unfortunately, some professionals prefer to blame the woman so they don't hurt the male ego. It's a terrible prejudice, but it still happens. Sheila left the doctor's office with a mix of rage and relief. Rage for having been blamed unfairly all those years. Relief at knowing there was never anything wrong with her. That night, organizing all the evidence she had collected, Sheila realized she held in her hands the power to completely destroy Skye's scam. She had photos of the affair, recordings of the conversations, proof of theft, and now the medical confirmation that Darren was infertile. But she didn't just want to expose Skye privately. She wanted to do it in the most public and humiliating way possible. The same way she had been humiliated at the supermarket, in front of everyone. And she knew exactly where this would happen. Darren was throwing a lavish party to announce his engagement to Skye and officially introduce the baby that was on the way. All his friends, family and business partners would be there. It would be the perfect stage for the biggest reveal of her life. Sheila smiled for the first time in months. Skye thought she had won. She thought she had fooled everyone perfectly. But she had no idea that the woman she had humiliated and looked down on had been forged into a force she could never have imagined. The party was in a few days, and when it came, Sheila would be there. Not as the humiliated and defeated ex-wife everyone expected to see, but as the woman who was about to reveal the most shocking truth those people had ever heard. The party was being held in the most luxurious function center in the city, the kind of place where only the super rich celebrated the most important moments of their lives. Darren had spared no expense. Imported flowers, French champagne, an orchestra playing classical music, and a buffet that cost more than most people earned in a year. Skye was glowing, wearing a beige dress that cost a fortune, and perfectly accentuated her now prominent baby bump. She moved through the party, receiving congratulations, hugs, and expensive gifts, as if she were a princess being crowned. Everyone who came up to her made a point of touching her belly and wishing the couple well. "Darren, you must be over the moon," commented Richard, one of his business partners. "After so long trying for kids, you finally did it." Darren smiled proudly, his hand possessively on Skye's waist. "It was a wonderful surprise. Skye gave me the most precious gift a man can receive." Skye smiled sweetly, but inside she was calculating how much more money she could still get from Darren before disappearing with the baby's real father. The party was perfect for her plans. Everyone here was a witness that Darren was officially assuming paternity. This would strengthen any future child support case. "Skye, you look incredible," Kylie said, coming up with a wrapped, expensive gift. "You must be so happy to have achieved what Sheila could never give Darren." "Thanks, Kylie. It's funny how life works, isn't it? Sometimes the right person was just there all along, just waiting for the opportunity." Skye spoke loud enough for other guests to hear. Every sentence was calculated to humiliate Sheila's memory. What none of them expected was that Sheila would actually show up at the party, but not in the way they imagined. When the doors of the main hall opened and she walked in, a murmur of surprise rippled through the entire room. Sheila was completely transformed. Her hair was perfectly cut and styled. She was wearing an elegant dress, flawless makeup, and most importantly, a confidence no one had seen in her during the terrible period after the divorce. But what shocked everyone was the man walking beside her. Dr. Liam was everything Darren was not. Younger, naturally elegant, and most importantly, he treated Sheila with a kindness and respect that was obvious to everyone. "Oh my God, it's Sheila!" someone whispered loudly enough to be heard across the room. Skye nearly choked on her champagne when she saw Darren's ex-wife walking in like she owned the place. But what really disturbed her was the fact that Sheila wasn't alone, and that she seemed genuinely happy next to that man. Darren went white as a sheet. He wasn't expecting to see Sheila there, let alone with a date and with that confident look. During the whole divorce process, he had gotten used to seeing her as a defeated, broken woman who accepted every humiliation without a fight. "Who invited her?" Skye whispered to Darren, trying to keep her smile for the guests. "I don't know. I had no idea she was coming." Dr. Liam led Sheila through the room with the grace of a true gentleman. He pulled out a chair for her to sit in, brought her drinks, and spoke politely with the people who approached them. It was the kind of treatment Sheila had never received from Darren, not even at the beginning of their marriage. "Sheila, what a surprise to see you here." Kylie approached with that fake smile people use when they're caught in an awkward situation. "How are you?" "I'm great, Kylie. Thanks so much for asking." Sheila replied with a serenity that left her old friend completely flustered. "And this is?" "Dr. Liam, my boyfriend. Liam, this is Kylie, an old acquaintance." Dr. Liam greeted Kylie politely, but without much interest. His attention was focused on Sheila, and anyone who looked at them could see that he genuinely cared about her. The news that Sheila had a doctor boyfriend spread through the party like wildfire. In a few minutes, all the guests knew that Darren's defeated ex-wife wasn't so defeated after all. "Liam, where do you work?" Richard asked, clearly curious about the new situation. "I'm a urologist at St. Anthony's Hospital." "And you all? How do you know Sheila?" Liam's innocent question created an awkward silence. How could they explain that everyone there had abandoned Sheila when she needed support the most? How could they say they chose to side with Darren out of convenience? That's when Skye decided to take charge. She wasn't going to let Sheila steal the spotlight from her party. "Sheila, it's so good that you managed to rebuild your life," she said, approaching with her belly on full display, as if it were a trophy. "It must have been so difficult to get over the disappointment of not being able to give Darren kids." The sentence was a calculated strike to humiliate Sheila in front of everyone, especially her new boyfriend. Skye wanted Dr. Liam to know that Sheila was a flawed woman who couldn't get pregnant, but Sheila's reaction was completely different from what Skye expected. "Thanks for the concern, Skye. Actually, can I ask you a question about your condition?" "Of course," Skye replied confidently, thinking Sheila was going to ask something like when the baby was due or if they knew the sex. "How's your real boyfriend? The dark-haired one you meet at the cafe in the city centre?" The silence that fell over the group was deafening. Skye went pale, stumbling over her words. I don't know what you're talking about." "You don't?" Sheila took her phone out of her bag with the casualness of someone commenting on the weather. "Let me refresh your memory." And then, to Skye's horror and the shock of everyone present, Sheila started playing an audio recording. The voice was unmistakably Skye's. "Babe, I can't stand pretending this baby is the old man's. It won't be long now. When the kid's born, we'll take his money and disappear and live our lives far away from here." The recording continued, every word like a bomb exploding in the middle of the party. The guests moved closer, disbelieving, listening to Skye confess that the baby wasn't Darren's, that she was stealing his money, that the whole thing was nothing but an elaborate scam. Darren looked like he had been punched in the stomach. "Skye? What? How? I can explain everything." Skye tried desperately to get control of the situation, but her voice was shaky and nervous. "Can you?" Sheila continued, with that unnerving calm. "Then explain this too. and she showed everyone the photos Mick had taken. Sky kissing another man. Sky going in and out of motels with the baby's real father. Sky using Darren's company credit cards to pay for romantic getaways with her lover. And since we're talking about explanations, Sheila continued, addressing Darren directly, Liam has something interesting to tell you about those fertility tests we did. Dr. Liam approached Darren with the professionalism of someone dealing with a patient. Darren, I need to inform you about something regarding your old test results. Sheila showed me the results, and unfortunately there's some information you weren't given at the time. What information? According to your tests, you have severe azospermia. This means you are completely infertile. There is no chance you could have children naturally. The entire party stopped. The waiters stopped serving drinks. The orchestra stopped playing. 200 people fell into a total silence, processing the devastating information they had just heard. Darren looked at Sky, then at Dr. Liam, then at Sheila. Infertile? I'm infertile. Completely. Which means if Sky is pregnant, the baby is definitely not yours. Sky collapsed, literally. She sank into a nearby chair, her hands on her face, knowing she had been completely exposed in front of everyone. But how? Why didn't anyone tell me this before? Darren asked, still trying to process the information. Unfortunately, some doctors prefer to blame the woman so they don't hurt the male ego, Dr. Liam explained. It's a terrible prejudice, but it still happens. Sheila was blamed unfairly all those years. Darren looked at Sheila with an expression that mixed shock, remorse, and shame. Sheila, I didn't know. I know you didn't know, Darren, but you knew you were cheating on me. You knew you were humiliating me. You knew you were abandoning me when I needed you most. The party had transformed into a public courtroom, and Sky was the main accused. The guests looked at her with a mix of anger and disbelief. The woman who just minutes before had been treated like a princess was now seen as a criminal. You lot, Sheila said, addressing everyone present. I know this is awkward for you too. Many of you abandoned me when I needed support. You chose to side with Darren because it was more convenient. The awkwardness in the room was palpable. Kylie lowered her head, ashamed. Richard and the other partners avoided looking directly at Sheila. But I didn't come here to humiliate anyone, Sheila continued. I came here so the truth would come out, and so you would know that sometimes the person who seems the weakest is actually the strongest. The silence in the room was so heavy you could hear the scuff of people's shoes shifting nervously on the marble floor. Sky remained sitting in the chair with her hands covering her face, trying to process that her entire scam had been discovered in the worst way possible. Darren stood in the middle of the room, looking around as if he'd woken up from a nightmare only to discover he was living a worse one. The information that he was completely infertile was not only destroying his idea of fatherhood, but the entire foundation of what he thought he knew about himself. Sky. He spoke softly, but his voice echoed in the total silence. Look up and look at me. She slowly raised her face, her eyes red and her makeup smudged. For the first time since anyone had known her, Sky didn't look like a confident and calculating woman. She looked like someone who had been completely exposed. Is what Sheila said true? Sky opened her mouth to try and lie again, but she knew it was pointless. The recordings had been too clear, the photos were undeniable, and Dr. Liam's presence confirmed that Darren really was infertile. Darren, I can explain. Then explain. His voice came out louder this time, loaded with a controlled rage that scared even the guests closest to him. Explain how you got pregnant by another man and made me believe it was my son. I was scared of losing you. Bullshit! Sheila interjected, taking more papers from the gold folder she was carrying. Sky, or should I say Letitia Santos, you weren't scared of losing anything. You were running the same scam you've already pulled on at least 3 other men before Darren. The real name echoed through the room like a bomb. Letitia Santos. Amanda wasn't even her real name. Letitia Santos has a police record for fraud, Sheila continued, showing documents to anyone who wanted to see. She specializes in scamming older married men with money. The method is always the same. Seduce, separate the man from his wife, and then take all the money, the apartment, the car. That's not true. Skye tried to defend herself, but her voice was weak, without conviction. Isn't it? Sheila opened another folder. Here are the names of the other men you scammed. John Peterson, a real estate mogul. He ended up paying child support for a kid that wasn't his. Carlo Mendez, owner of a chain of pharmacies. He had a severe breakdown when he discovered the truth. Edward Simmons, a lawyer. Stop! Stop it! Skye screamed, standing up from the chair. But her scream only confirmed that everything was true. Darren turned even paler. How many men did you scam before me? Darren, please let me explain in private. There is no more private, he replied coldly. You lied to 200 people here today. You can talk in front of all of them. Dr. Liam moved closer to Darren, realizing the man was too shaken. Darren, you need to sit down. This revelation can cause a huge shock. I'm fine. No, you're not. As a doctor, I can see you're in a state of shock. You need to process this information calmly. But Darren didn't want calm. He wanted answers. He turned to Skye with an expression no one had ever seen before. The baby. Whose baby is it? Skye hesitated, looking around the room, searching for an exit that didn't exist. All the guests were watching her, waiting for an answer. It's Raphael's, she whispered. Who's Raphael? My boyfriend. The confession dropped like a bomb in the middle of the party. Darren had to lean on a chair to keep from falling. Your boyfriend? You have a boyfriend and you're having his baby? Yeah. And you made me believe it was my son? Yes. Why? Why did you do that to me? Skye looked at all the faces around her, seeing anger, disdain, disappointment. There was nothing left to lose. Maybe it was time to tell the full truth for the first time in her life. Because you're rich, and he's not, she said with a coldness that shocked everyone. Because you could give my child a good life and he couldn't. So it was never about love? Love? Skye laughed, but it was a bitter, humourless laugh. Darren, did you really think a 25-year-old woman was going to fall in love with a 47-year-old man who was already married just for his charm? The cruelty of the answer cut through the silence like a blade. Darren realized he had been used in the coldest way possible. You never felt anything for me. I felt gratitude. You gave me a nice house, expensive clothes, a new car. But love, please. Kylie, who was watching from afar, came up to Sheila. Sheila, how did you find out all this? I hired a private investigator. I've been investigating Skye this whole time. I mean, Letitia. I just knew something was wrong. But why didn't you tell Darren before? Sheila looked at her old friend with an expression that mixed sadness and understanding. Kylie, did you really think Darren would have believed me? After everything that happened? After all of you chose his side? The awkward question echoed through the room. How many people there had abandoned Sheila when she needed them most? How many had chosen to side with Darren and Skye out of convenience? Besides, Sheila continued, I needed irrefutable evidence. I couldn't just show up here with suspicions. I needed to be absolutely certain of every single accusation. Dr. Liam put a hand on Sheila's shoulder, affectionately. And you got all the proof you needed? I did. But it wasn't easy. It took time, money, and most importantly, the courage to face the truth. Darren slowly approached Sheila, with a humility no one had ever seen before. "Sheila, I don't even know where to begin to apologize." "You don't need to apologize for being fooled, Darren. You need to apologize for abandoning me in such a cruel way. You're right. I abandoned you in the worst way possible. I blamed you for something that was never your fault. And you let me believe that all these years of our marriage, I was the one who was flawed. I thought I had some kind of problem, that I couldn't give you the child you wanted. And you let me believe it. Even worse, you used that as an excuse to cheat on me." The conversation between the ex-spouses was being watched by 200 people, but it felt too intimate to be public. It was the reckoning that should have happened a long time ago. Skye realized she had completely lost control of the situation. She tried one last desperate card. "Darren, I know I made a mistake, but the baby needs a father. You can still be its dad, even knowing the truth." The suggestion was so absurd that several people let out gasps of disbelief. "You have the nerve to ask that after everything you did?" Darren looked at her with disgust. "After you humiliated me, lied to me, used me. I'm thinking about the baby. You're thinking about the child support I was going to pay." He cut her off coldly. "About the apartment I was going to give you. About the money you were going to keep getting." Skye lowered her head, knowing she had been exposed on every single detail of her plan.
"Darren," Sheila interjected once more, "there's one more thing you don't know about Skye."
"What else?" "She was stealing money from your company. You have credit cards in the company's name that you didn't even know existed." Darren went red with rage. "What do you mean, stealing?" Sheila showed him bank statements that Mick had gotten. Dozens of expensive purchases, meals at fancy restaurants, weekend trips, all paid for with his company's money. "Skye, is this true?" She didn't answer, but her silence was a sufficient confirmation. "How much?" Darren asked coldly. "How much what? How much did you steal from me?" Skye mumbled something inaudible. "Speak up." "About $50,000, maybe more." The number exploded in the room like another bomb. $50,000 stolen on top of everything she had already gotten as his girlfriend. "Maybe more?" Darren was losing his composure. "What do you mean, maybe more? It could be 60 or 70. The coldness with which Skye spoke about the stolen money was the final straw for many of the guests. Some people started leaving the party, too embarrassed to continue watching the spectacle, but others stayed, mesmerized by the magnitude of the scam that had been revealed. "Skye," Sheila said with a chilling calm, "I think it's time for you to go." "Go where?" "Anywhere far away from here. The party is over for you." Skye looked around, searching for at least one person who would show a little compassion. But all the faces she saw showed only contempt and anger. She picked up her bag and headed for the exit, walking slowly as if she expected someone to call her back. But no one said a word. 200 people watched in silence as Skye walked out of the party, out of Darren's life, and probably out of the city. When the doors closed behind her, the silence continued for a few seconds until someone started to clap and others joined in. And in a few seconds, the whole party was applauding Sheila. It wasn't an applause of celebration. It was an applause of recognition, of respect, of admiration for a woman who had been completely broken and managed to rise from the ashes in a masterful way. Sheila smiled for the first time in a long time. A genuine smile from someone who had finally found peace. The days that followed the party were like the waves of an emotional tsunami that hit the lives of everyone involved. The whole city was talking about what had happened in that lavish hall, and social media talked about nothing else. Darren spent the first few days locked in the apartment he had once shared with Skye, trying to process the magnitude of what he had lost. Not just the stolen money or the public humiliation. He had lost something far more precious. his idea of who he really was and what he was truly worth. When he finally got the courage to leave the house, his first stop was Dr. Liam's office. He needed to better understand his medical condition. But most of all, he needed a bridge to get to Sheila. "Dr. Liam, I need to talk to Sheila. I need to sincerely apologize away from all the chaos of the party." Liam looked at him with the seriousness of someone who knew human pain well. "Darren, Sheila went through a profound trauma because of you. She's rebuilding herself, finding peace. Are you sure you want to disrupt her again? I just want her to know that I understood the size of my mistake, that I recognize how badly I treated her. And after that, what do you expect to happen?" Darren was silent for a while. "Nothing. I don't expect anything. I just want her to have the peace of hearing a sincere apology." Liam agreed to talk to Sheila, and to Darren's surprise, she agreed to meet, but not alone. Liam would be there, and it would be in a public, neutral place. The meeting happened in a discreet cafe, away from the hustle and bustle of the city centre. When Darren arrived, Sheila was already there, talking calmly with Liam. She seemed completely different from the broken woman he had left behind. "Sheila?" Darren approached hesitantly. "Thanks for agreeing to see me. Sit down, Darren. Let's talk like adults." He sat down, observing her face. There was a serenity there that he had never seen before, as if she had gone through a painful process that had strengthened her in an irreversible way. "I came to apologize," he started. "A sincere apology, without trying to justify myself." "I'm listening." "Sheila, I destroyed our life for the sake of a fantasy. I thought Sky was everything I wanted, when in reality you were always everything I needed." She listened to him in silence, showing neither anger nor sadness, just respectful attention. "I blamed you for not being able to have kids when the problem was always with me. I abandoned you in a cruel way. I let Sky humiliate you. I allowed you to lose your job." "Darren," Sheila interrupted him gently. "Are you finished?" "No. There's one more thing I need to say." "Go on." "I loved you. I've always loved you, but I couldn't show that love in a mature way. I confused an infatuation with passion, novelty with happiness." Sheila nodded. "Thank you for those words. That's what I needed to hear to have peace." "Sheila, is there any chance we could—" "No, Darren, there isn't." The answer was direct, but not cruel, just definitive. "We had our story. It was beautiful at some points, painful at others, but it ended the way it had to." "What do you mean?" "It showed me who I really am when I lose everything. It taught me that I can stand on my own 2 feet. It made me discover that I deserve to be loved for real." Liam smiled discreetly, seeing the maturity with which Sheila was handling the situation. "And Sky?" Darren asked. "Do you know what happened to her?" "Sky went back to her hometown, from what I heard, but Raphael, the baby's father, is no longer with her. And the baby? It's going to be born and raised by Sky's mum. At least it will have a family that can give it true love." Darren lowered his head. "Everyone lost in this story." "Not everyone," Sheila corrected him. "I won a lot." "What did you win after all you went through?" "I won self-knowledge. I won a strength I didn't know I had. I won the certainty that I can start over as many times as I need to. And most importantly," she looked at Liam with genuine affection, "I won someone who loves me for who I am, not for what I can or can't give." Liam took Sheila's hand on the table in a simple gesture that spoke more than 1,000 words. "Sheila," Darren tried one more time, "if you ever want to try again—" "Darren, listen to me carefully. I forgive you. I forgive you for everything you did to me, but forgiving doesn't mean going back. Forgiving means moving on in peace. And what if I change? What if I prove I can be different? You need to change for you, not for me. You need to discover who you really are when you're not trying to impress anyone. Dr. Liam decided to join the conversation. Darren, can I offer some medical advice? Sure. Seek professional help, a therapist. You've also been through trauma. You were fooled, manipulated, used. That leaves marks that need to be treated. You think I need therapy? I think everyone does at some point in their life, especially after situations like this. Darren nodded, realizing that maybe that was really the path to rebuilding himself.
Sheila, can I ask one last question? You can? Can you be happy after everything that happened?
For the first time during the meeting, Sheila smiled.
Darren, I'm already happy. Happy in a way I've never been before. When I was married to you, my happiness depended on your approval, your mood, your decisions. Now, my happiness comes from within, from knowing who I am, what I'm capable of, what I'm worth. And does Liam have a part in that happiness? He does, but as a complement, not as the foundation. The foundation is me.
The conversation ended naturally. Darren understood there was no going back, but he also understood that maybe there shouldn't have been. Sheila, thank you for everything you taught me, even unintentionally. It's a good thing you managed to learn something. They said goodbye at the cafe door, a respectful handshake, without rancor, but also without warmth. Liam and Sheila walked down the street together, holding hands, talking about plans for the future. Are you sure you don't want to try again with him? Liam asked, more out of curiosity than insecurity. I'm absolutely certain. Some bridges, once burned, shouldn't be rebuilt. They should just serve to get you to the other side. And what is that other side? The side where I know who I am, where I don't have to shrink myself so someone else can feel bigger, where I can be loved for who I really am. Sometime later, everyone heard that Sheila and Liam had gotten married in a quiet ceremony, just with people who truly mattered. Nothing extravagant, nothing to show off. Just two people who chose each other for true love. Darren never got into a serious relationship with anyone again. He went to therapy for 2 years, learned about himself, his insecurities, the difference between love and possession. He rebuilt his company, paid all the debts Sky had racked up, and now lives a simpler but more authentic life. Sky was never seen in the city again. The baby was born healthy and was raised by its grandmother, far from all the chaos. Sometimes people say they saw her in other cities, always chasing after rich blokes, always with the same story of a pregnant, love-struck woman. Kylie and the other friends who abandoned Sheila tried to get close again after the party, but she was polite and firm. Thanks, but I don't need your friendship anymore. I learned to value quality, not quantity. 2 years later, Sheila discovered she was pregnant with Liam's baby. The most important lesson that came out of this whole story wasn't about betrayal or revenge. It was about resilience, about the capacity every human being has to rise from the worst situations and come out stronger on the other side. Sheila proved that no matter how many times life knocks us down, we can always choose to get back up. No matter how many people abandon us, we can always choose to find ourselves. No matter how many lies we are told, we can always choose to live the truth. And most importantly, she proved that self-love is the only love that can never be taken away from us. It is the only one truly worth cultivating, because it is the foundation of all the others. So, what do you reckon? Have you ever had a moment where you had to find your own strength? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more incredible stories.